Alright, today we're going to be replacing this axle. As you can see, it's split right here. And the major thing this video is going to be about is replacing this axle seal. This is a 2002 Outback with a 4 EAT, so an automatic 4-speed. There is an axle seal behind here that, and it happens on both sides. On this one, it's the driver's side, that will leak gear oil down. And the way that this is designed with the exhaust is it will drip right onto where the exhaust joins right here, and it'll make the car smell terrible. And that's what's happening with this car. It smells terrible all the time inside the car, and when you're sitting at idle, it just stinks like burning gear oil. So it's time to replace this axle, and we're going to take care of this axle seal while we're in there. And then clean all this up and try to get that smell to go away. It's probably going to persist for a little bit, but you know, the biggest thing is going to be you know, just getting it cleaned off so it can burn off and eventually go away. So the first thing is, and I have another video about how to pop these out, but this style has a roll pin that holds the axle on. So that roll pin's got to get knocked out. Obviously we're going to get the wheel off, so we can get to that axle nut. And then generally you can get enough swing if you just knock this ball joint nut off and get that out of there. You can usually swing it enough to get the axle out without disassembling the whole suspension. So we will need a special tool for this, I believe. Some of these are, you can just knock the seal in from the outside. Some of them you have to take this sundial off, which is basically a retainer, but it's important that you count the turns when you do it, because it sets a preload on a bearing that's inside there. So we're gonna get this cleaned up. We're gonna spray it down and get it cleaned up as much as we can, so we're not working in all this grease. And then we'll start taking this axle out. And then once we get in there, I'll show you how to do the sundial. Alright, you're also going to want to disconnect the sway bar end link, whether down here or up here. I'm going to do mine down here. That way we can swing this lower control arm out of the way. Okay, so we got this cleaned up here as much as I could with what I have, so we can at least see what's going on. We got our wheel off, and I went ahead and busted this loose. Just got this nut off, and then instead of smacking on this, a lot of people will smack on this, and that can damage the threads. It's actually better if you smack on the sides here until it kind of breaks loose. And then this is going to be basically spring-loaded because of the bushings here. So a trick that I like to use is I'll put a ratchet strap and just hook them here, and then you can just ratchet, and that'll hold this down out of your way. See that? And that'll give you enough swing so that you can get this axle out. Somebody's previously done this, and as you can see, they didn't dimple the nut here. So you're supposed to get this torqued to spec, and then use a chisel and knock that in. So this bearing, we're gonna have to feel this bearing and make sure it's not compromised. But yeah, basically we're gonna zip this off, and then we'll knock that roll pin out right there and get this axle out of here. You're gonna need a long nose punch like this, that's a proper diameter. You might be able to use a bolt or something that's similar, but these long nose punches are the best thing for this. And there is a roll pin inside here that you just have to tap out. So that's what the roll pin looks like. The new axle might come with a new one, it might not, so hold on to this. But now that that's out, and we undid our axle nut on the front, which is a 30mm, by the way, we'll be able to slide this out, and I'll show you that. Alright, so on this side, to get this out, sometimes these are really stuck, so some PB Blaster or penetrating oil of some sort, some love taps. You got to be really careful not to mushroom the head of this, so you don't want to just wail on it with a sledgehammer, because then it might not come out at all. Luckily, I was able to tap this one out just by putting like a ball peen hammer and then smacking the back of it with a mini sledge. Something like this. So basically like that, and then you smack the back of it with a mini sledge. That way you don't mar it up. This one did come loose. I have had them seize in there. If it's not coming loose, you might have to take the whole thing off, take it to a press. If that doesn't work, you might have to replace the whole hub. It kind of really depends on how rusty they get. Most of the time you can get them out with a good smack, then they'll move freely. Penetrating oil is your friend. I like to put anti-seize on it when I put it back together to prevent that from happening in the future. But now that that's out and we're out on this side, we should I'll probably need both of my hands, but we should be able to snake this out of here. So with the axle out, you can now see the axle seal right there, and that's where our leak's coming from, is that seal. As you can see, this style is set behind this retaining ring, so we're gonna have to get that retaining ring off, and because of that, you're gonna need 2 seals. So I've got both your part numbers right there. So you've got your main seal, and then there's a big O-ring that goes behind this. So we're gonna take a paint pen and we're gonna mark where this is sitting currently, and then basically you're just gonna count the rotations as it comes off so that you remember how many to put it back on. So I'm gonna mark that with a paint pen, and then we're gonna start taking it off. I'll show you the special tool we're gonna use too. Okay, so before we get taking this off, we've got our pin mark here. We need to remove, there's a keeper up here that's held on by this bolt. So basically you just zip that bolt out, and you can kind of pry back on this, and you can just rotate the keeper out of the way, or you can pull it out completely. It's like a little washer. And then when we're done, we'll put it back and lock it down, and that will keep the sundial from moving on us. Okay, so company 23 tool number 559. This is what it looks like. It's a sundial bearing carrier tool 1. There is 2 versions of this. This tool does all the automatic non-turbo automatics, maybe some of the turbo automatics, I'm not sure, but most of the turbo and most of the manual transmissions, for that matter, you can just tap the seal in without taking the sundial off. I think on some of the 90s, early 90s, or late 90s, you also need this even on the manuals. In the later, like WRXs and STIs, you don't need generally to do the sundial on most of them. You'll have to kind of just look at yours and see. If it does not require the removal of the sundial, the seal will generally have a lip on it. These flat type seals like that generally mean that the sundial is going to have to come off. So it's kind of how you can tell. So basically, this tool goes on like so, and those little teeth grab those spots, and then you can take it off. Alright, as you can see, I've made a paint mark here so that I can pay attention to the rotations. And now we're going to take this tool, we're going to put it on, and then it's probably going to be really tight, so we're going to crack it loose. And then as we come out, we're going to pay attention to the rotations that it takes. Okay, so there's one, and yours is probably going to be different. They're all a little different. They're set with a preload. Two. feel like we're close here. Basically 7 exactly. So we're going to pull this off. You can either drain the gear lube up front, or this was decently fresh gear lube, so I wasn't too worried about it. But you could drain it from the drain first, or you can let some spill out. You'll lose roughly 1/3 of the fluid doing it this way, and then we're just going to top it off. So we're going to let that drain out, and then all the work we're going to do. So there's that big O-ring right there, and we're going to knock that seal out, and you can see that seal is actually torn right there. Okay, so now that this is off the car, you can get a better look. So you can see that torn spot. That's where our big leak's been coming from. So basically, you got this big O-ring here that we're going to replace. Super important that you do this while it's out. Otherwise, it'll leak through the threads here. So we've got that big O-ring we're going to replace. And then this seal has to come out the back. So we're going to put it face down. We're going to use a big socket. In this case, it's the same socket we used to take the nut off. And then we're just going to give it a quick smack. Or a couple. Make sure you brace yourself on something soft like wood so it doesn't damage this. So this is our seal out. So now we're going to flip it over, and we'll knock our new seal in very carefully after we clean this all out. So we're going to get some rags, clean this all up really good, and then we'll knock our new seal in. Alright, so to put it back in, you got to be really careful here. You don't want a socket that's going to land on the inside of this and deform it at all. And so I found this 36 is the perfect diameter to grab the outer lip right here. And so we've got this flipped over, and we're going to take our 36 and very carefully we're going to tap it back in. Making sure to stay on the outer ledge of the seal so we don't ruin it. So you might have to reposition as you go. And I'm sure Subaru has a special tool for this, but I have never used one. So you see I'm lifting and checking, making sure I'm going in straight. You're going to make sure you're not marring up the metal. There you go. It basically lands just flush with the outside of this. So as you can see, it's all the way in there. Yep, and then we'll just replace this O-ring and we'll go back on. Alright, so now that we've got this all together, you're going to want to make sure you kind of wipe some oil around that big O-ring on the outside, and then just be kind of careful of how this mounts, because this is going to want to hang, because this centers it. So just make sure you don't bugger up that new seal. And then we're going to go back on. We'll start threading by hand. Oop. Make sure you get it started by hand before you start wrenching on it. Alright, we're going here. And then basically we're just going to go back on the amount of turns that we came off. So there's 1. 2. 3. 4. It's gonna be slippery. 4. I'm probably going to stop the video there, but make sure you go back on the same amount that you came off, and then we'll pick back up. Alright, so we got ourselves turned back in. We got our keeper back on, our bolt back in. Now we can thread our new axle. Make sure that you grease or put some stuff on the axle splines and into the hub so it doesn't get seized in there or fight you. A little bit of penetrating oil helps, but anti-seize is the best. And then we'll get this back in here. As far as lining this up, you might have to try it and then try it 180 degrees. It'll only line up one direction where you can get that roll pin in, otherwise it'll be off about a half a tooth. I want to show you an example of what it looks like when it's 180 degrees out. So I don't know if you can see that right there, but you got about a half a tooth showing. If you're not paying attention, you will fight that and fight that and fight that trying to get that roll pin in. So I have to pop this back out, spin it 180 degrees and put it back on, and then it will line up. Alright, there is our example of it looking proper. So it's complete pass-through. Sorry, can't get this thing to focus in, but got her in there, got her in this side. Once we get this staked in, we'll go ahead and put the nut on the outside there. Okay, so our roll pin is knocked back in. If you're doing the driver's side, they're pretty easy. If you're doing the passenger side, it's a pain in the butt. You gotta snake up through here between these. You can kind of use an extension and like an 8mm socket on the end of the extension to hold the roll pin as you get it started. If you have to snake it up through here. But for this side, it's pretty easy just to get in. So, alright, so that's all in. We cleaned up our gear oil that we spilled again with some brake clean. And now we're going to come out here and we're going to get our new axle nut on, torque to spec. I will probably end up lowering the vehicle down so I can torque these. The best way I found to hold it is you just lay it down and then you can thread a big breaker bar through these studs here as you're torquing so that the wheel doesn't spin. I'll show you that when I'm down on the ground. Okay, so if you have a long pry bar, you can thread it through like so to stop this from turning. Alternatively, if your other wheel's still on and it's on the ground and in park, that will also stop it from turning. But if you have both off, you'll need to brace this. This is 159 foot-pounds is what this should be torqued to. So those are your two options. I do have the other wheel on, so I don't need that. And basically, we're just gonna torque this guy down and put the wheel back on, and then we'll top up the differential. So once you get this torqued down, you need to take a chisel and a hammer, and you're just gonna ding that flange right there into that dimple. That'll keep the nut from backing out. Just like that. Now we can put the wheel back on and fill up the diff. Okay, so on the passenger side of the engine compartment, might be kind of hard to see. Oh, you can kind of see it right there. So there's a yellow handle down there, and that is your differential. So automatics have two dipsticks. So on the passenger side, you have your differential, which takes gear oil. 80, 90, 75, 90 will work. And then on the driver's side, you have your actual transmission fluid, your automatic transmission fluid. So there's two dipsticks. The leak that we were fixing was for the differential, the gear oil. Very important that you make sure you have enough of that. You can seize up your differential. So dipsticks there, we're gonna pull it out. We're gonna top it off. I'm guessing we lost roughly half a quart to almost a quart of fluid. We're gonna top it off and make sure she's good to go. This one you check engine off, still level. The ATF one on the other side, you check running and hot. So basically this is where you're gonna do it.